Dorel Juvenile. Maybe a lot of people don't know Dorel, but Dorel stands for Maxicosi. That in the Netherlands is very well known. Baby Comfort in Southern Europe. We also have other brands: Quinny, Safety First, and lately also Tiny Love. So a lot of brands and a lot of different baby products. I am one of the researchers in the research team within Dorel, and actually I come from the background of economic psychology, so great insights today, and really nice to hear all these theories again and these methodologies. But as a researcher within a company, I've also learned not a lot of people care outside of our research team about how we do it, but they want to know what they can do with it. And so I hope that we can share a little bit of how we are trying to tell the story towards our R&D department, our marketeers, and try to get insights into action, actually. So what happened recently, we were a European team. So indeed, cultural differences within Europe, very important. We're focused, we're based in the Netherlands, but we're focused a lot on UK, Germany, France. They're very different. And then all of a sudden, we became a global team. Europe is Europe, and all of a sudden, we have to look at the Americas, at Asia, and we actually, well, you know, we said Asia. That's not how it is. Asia is very different, and a lot of different countries. So we had to dig in there and had to just look at how moms and dads behave there, how they get along, how they go out the street with their babies. We had no idea. And that's why we thought, instead of focusing on new product development research, what we do a lot in our team, new concepts, concept testing, prototype testing, we have to go back to the beginning, back to the kickoff phase. We have to learn about behavior and through ethnographic research. So we had some experience with communities before. We did the urban parents community. We also presented that here a couple of years ago. Very interesting. We also did some studies ourselves with innovation team and with mobile apps in US, in London, and countries where we could speak the languages ourselves. Very interesting to see the lives of these people and what, through mobile apps, people are willing to share with you that is not seen when you maybe visit your own sister, but when you ask someone to take a picture of their house just on a regular day, it looks terrible, it's a mess. And we were very surprised people were willing to share that with us. For example, strollers that are just sort of closets and that contain everything from baby stuff to their own stuff because it's just in the way. Also very scary moments maybe when you use the public transport and just have to get everything in the train at the same time and make sure everyone's safe. And also scary moments in Asia where mainly stairs are like the big monsters of their journey. So that was very interesting, but also mainly still in the Western world we found a lot of insights. So we really wanted to go further east and further into Asia, and we realized we needed help with that. We can't do everything ourselves, and actually that's where Studio INTO came in, and they helped us find, through the cultural guides, find more and deeper insights in Japan, South Korea, and China. I'd like to give the word to Joanna to tell how she did that.
Okay, hello, I'm Jonah Bracket. I'm the director of Studio INTO. We're an innovation consultancy headquartered in London. We combine social sciences processes with design processes, all of that together to inform innovation. So we researched by looking at individuals, at their behaviors, but we always contextualize that in the social and cultural context. So today we've heard a lot all of us are concerned with the same kind of aspects and challenges. It's all going global. We need to understand consumers locally. Culture and society are becoming more and more complex. Markets are changing faster. And brands have to adapt to this accelerated speed, but also be more relevant locally. But at the same time, what is very important, have that global overview and not just be local. So facing this, we started to rethink our methodologies, the way we act, and how can we reach out into countries such as the Asian countries very quickly, efficiently, because the challenge is always the same. It's like, how can we do it quickly, cheaply, but be excellent quality? So what we've done, we basically expanded. We expanded our team, and now we work with 80 cultural guides, and we're located in 62 countries. And in those countries, we have an individual who is an expert, who has background in innovation, in design, in research, and they are highly engaged in their own culture. They understand their own culture. But at the same time, all of our cultural guides lived abroad, they studied abroad, and they have the vision of the global and of much wider social and cultural influences. So here we reached out to our Asian colleagues. So we started, so we started a project with Dorel. And so the project was, yes, let's look at opportunities in those countries. Not testing, not verifying, it's the front end of the process. This was very much a cultural immersion, which was then informing processes which Emma will tell you about. So in terms of project scope, yes, we worked in 3 countries across different cities, and we worked with our cultural guides. And we used mobile ethnographic tools. Here, mobile ethnographic tools are, on the one hand, great, because you can reach out into many countries, into many cities across China, for example, at the same time. It reduces costs, is efficient, and much quicker. However, the challenge with the mobile ethnographic tools is that you get like a telescopic view, you get a tunnel view of the perspective of the consumer. You see what they show you, and you don't see what's around. And here, this is where it becomes very important for us to work with our cultural guides, because they can tell us and analyze with us what's around. So they tell us also what consumers, why consumers behave in certain ways. What is the cultural and social kind of driver behind it? But very important, they give us the context around it. We worked with the families for about a week to 10 days. This is great because if you do ethnography, you travel, you maybe can spend a day, maybe 2 hours with the particular consumers and do ethnography. Here we can spend a whole cycle of a week. And especially fantastic, in terms of buggies. For example, in China, a pushchair is not used by one person. It's used very much during the week by grandparents, over the weekend by parents. So here we could see the different users and how they interact with that particular product. Of course, the limitations of this type of methodology is in emerging markets, of course, the penetration of mobile phones might be lower, so you need to consider that where you do it. And I think also the other limitation is what type of consumer group you work for. So here it was perfect. We're working with young families, young men and women, about middle class, who obviously were very fluent in using those technologies. If you were reaching out to older consumers, I would say, then obviously you need to see in those countries if they use it. So these are the limitations. Okay, so this type of methodology, working across distance, we don't travel, we work with the cultural guides, translating the cultural data, and it makes insights much more accessible. We can get them much quicker. We recruit our consumers, we build up relationships with our consumers, and in that way, the data is richer. But most importantly, it's in the analysis. We have a micro-macro perspective in our analysis, which we heard already today as well. And so from the micro perspective, it's the individual, and then the cultural guide adds that macro cultural and social drivers. But the cultural guide is also a micro for us, because they understand the nation, and then we act as the global overview. So it's all the time, you know, it's two sides of one coin, really. In terms of technology, yes, we started using specialist apps and tools like Revelation app, and there are many others now that you can use as an ethnographer to reach out to consumers. We found, yes, they are useful if you do the research in English or in one language, and they're optimized very much for the English-speaking markets or the European markets. Once you go into other countries, for example, like in China, it was very challenging. There are security walls. People find it sometimes difficult to download these apps. So what we started basically to use apps, local apps like WeChat in China, type WhatsApp type apps. They are optimized for those countries. Millions of people use them, and they're optimized for the internet speed, and people use them in a natural way, a natural life. We as researchers become basically part of their friends list. And we receive much more data in that way, and we can analyze it better because people send us answers. We then can follow up everything. So it's a backwards and forwards following up. Why? Why is this happening? What's around you? And then very quickly, I want to give you a little bit of social and cultural context before I give over to Emma. What we were able to find out with this type of methodology. So in Japan, we heard that actually today as well, young mothers are driven by social norms. That's nothing new. But for us, it was interesting to see how does this social norm really influence their behavior, and therefore influence how they use a pushchair, for example. So a mother is expected to keep their baby quiet. A quiet baby means a good mother. It's very, very strong, to the extent that mothers carry their babies in their baby carriers for very extended hours in a day, 4, 5 hours. They do everything. They clean, they cook, they just carry the baby around so that it's quiet. But then the usage of a buggy becomes very different. They use the buggy much less. A pushchair is then used for carrying heavy loads, for carrying shopping, and then as designers, then you think, well, then the balance, for example, of a pushchair becomes extremely important. So there's consequences from very simple social norms straight into the product and product usage. In Korea, quite different. Mothers, it's a very complex society, and there are a lot of complex social, cultural, political issues there. But put simply, it results in a very brand-driven parents, very competitive, and the quote become very small. But here, this mother says, "My friend bought a stalker for her baby, but he couldn't get it into the car, so in the end, they bought a new car." Yeah, and this is a real story. The brand of a pushchair is so important, and it's more important than a car actually. And again, what consequences does that have for example, for folding of a pushchair and how it fits? In China, it's a very changing society. We see a very brand-driven middle-class parents. Sorry, not brand-driven, lifestyle-driven. Lifestyle-driven, that means that not necessarily they already live that lifestyle, but they aspire to it. So marketing becomes very important, like in the first picture. A more balanced lifestyle is aspirational, traveling, spending quality time with family, rather than working like it was in the previous years, and communicating that. But then also aspirational in product usage. So for example, here in this picture, we have a car seat. So car seat is extremely aspirational of kind of like modern, forward-looking lifestyle and the sense of security. So people give car seats to a new family as a present. It's a thing to give as a present. And people use it, yes, but they don't harness the baby. And so they don't harness it because harnessing is perceived as restricting the body, but owning it and having a baby inside, that's the aspirational behavior here. So I'm going to give over to Emma, who's going to talk more about application of those insights.
Yeah, so I think that these studies that we did in Asia are a really good example of something that we started with one application in mind. And once we had done the research, we realized that it applied to many other aspects of our company and was very useful in ways that we could not even have predicted beforehand. So we originally started the first study that we did because we were working on a product in the innovation team that we had started when the company was a bit more European focused. And then when the company changed to this big global focus, we wanted to see if that product that we were working on would then be applicable to the Asian market. Again, Asia, generally, how we talked about it. So that's something that we could have done in a very more typical way, a concept study, a prototype evaluation, the way that we do it in the NPD process. But we thought that we know so little about the Asian market that there was really an opportunity to do this more big ethnographic study and to get a very underlying basic understanding of the culture, which then we could build on. So we started in Japan. We thought, we're gonna do this product for Queenie, which is a brand for HPP consumers, mostly with an urban focus. And so we thought, yeah, Japan, that's where those people are using public transportation. And it turns out no moms in Japan use public transportation. So from the beginning, we were proved wrong, that we didn't even know the questions that we needed to answer. And so we learned quite a lot from these studies. So I think really the big benefit of doing these studies is that you do get this cultural context. So this is a good example, and it's a bit hard to see. It seems like it got messed up, but we learned a cultural context that in Korea, it's moms and families are very focused on brain development. It starts from, by the time they're pregnant, they're doing special painting classes where they can start to develop the brain of their baby already. And we see that that cultural context is then manifested in these product features. So we see things like suspension on strollers is very important, and it's something that really helps to sell a stroller. We also see it in accessories like these head things in car seats and in strollers, which really protect the brain and the head from shaking. And so without that cultural context, it would be really impossible for us to even group these features together, to have that basic understanding of why they're so important and why they're selling. And so that also, of course, enables our R&D teams to think differently about these cultures, what product features and what products we can offer in those areas. So as we started this global adventure as a whole company, we kicked off a new project for another global product that we were working on. And we brought together regional marketing teams from Asia and also global R&D, global marketing teams. And as the research team, we were there and we gave these examples of the Asian consumers, and they were really very tangible. Their pictures, their quotes, their names of real people. And that was something that was new and was something that really allowed these marketeers who are always focusing on consumers, are always trying to do things for consumers, but seem to have this barrier between them and the consumers. These very tangible quotes, very tangible examples really brought their stories to life. And we had someone, a marketeer from Australia, say, I'm sorry, are these real people that we're talking about? And so that really brought to life this concept of, they always thought of consumers as this one group of people, but these really tangible examples helped really to bring them to life and to integrate the insights into these new products. So back to China and the car seats. I think this is something that's really proved to us that you can't just put a product in the market and say, we're selling these numbers, we can see the numbers of sales, and that's it. As a company, of course, we're trying to improve safety of children. We're trying to increase or decrease the deaths in cars. We're trying to really improve the safety, but that's more than a product. So we can see that a product is more than a purchase, and we need to work on things with our marketing teams alongside them to increase education, to increase awareness, things that we take for granted as Europeans that of course you have to buckle your child in, but things that in these other countries like China are not necessarily assumed. And so that's been a great learning. It's something that the regional teams have always told us, something that was not necessarily new for us, but these very tangible examples, these very tangible quotes, and these pictures of people using the products like this really helped to bring it to life and helped to surface it at the company. So another example from China, very interesting market for us. We think of a stroller as something that you put your baby in and then you take them outside and you push them around outside in the stroller. So typically that's how we start to design those products, that's how we think about them in their context. And China really challenged us on that. You can see here, they're a bit dark, but this first picture, they're using the stroller as a high chair. The second picture, they're using the stroller as a bed. And actually, as grandma cleans the house, they're actually moving the child from room to room with them. And the third picture, they're really using it as a play space for their young kid, where we might use a different product. And so when you see that these other uses, it really helps to challenge our R&D team again, and helps us to understand why accessories are selling so well, why certain products are selling so well. We always joke, why are tray tables selling so well? How often are kids eating? Why does everyone need a tray table for their stroller? But when you see these kind of different use cases, you can really begin to understand why those would be so important. And it challenges them to think of, when we try to make a product that is easy to use, that is practical, what is a practical product if they're really using it in these different contexts? And this is my last one, almost done here. I think that the big benefit within our company is that we did these ethnography studies, and we really got a very deep, very rich understanding of these 3 different countries and the people there. And the benefit of doing these big, very deep studies is that then we're able to do short, compact, quick studies also in those markets. And because we have such a deep understanding, those quick studies then are also very powerful and very useful for us. So a good example of this is, like Joanna was saying, in China, each family member has their own role. So typically the in-laws will move in with the parents when they have the baby. Happens in almost every family. And so very rarely is one person taking care of the baby themselves. So each family member has their own role. So it's granddad's role to fold the stroller, to take it in and out of the car, to bring it up and down the steps. So therefore, bulkier strollers or more complex folding strollers are still selling there very well because it's granddad's role. It's okay, there's a whole person dedicated to this role. But recently there's been a new stroller we'd like to put on the market, and it's not that big bulky stroller that we see in this ethnography study, but rather a smaller, more compact folding stroller. And we saw the same moms in Japan that we talked to, we saw them say, it's actually too heavy, it's too big for us. But when we brought this to China, we saw that those moms were actually empowered by the stroller. They thought, hey, maybe I can take my child out alone. Actually, this stroller could really help me to feel the freedom that I could move with my child alone. And so I think it's a really good example of how we use the ethnography as a big context for us, and then we're able to really understand the details of these short studies, like this user test with the new stroller. So I hope that gives you a good look into our company of how we try to apply the studies and the insights.